All right, I'm going to go live in about 10 seconds, everybody.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unit 2.6. It only seems like 10 minutes ago that Jundo was banging on the hand and opening this up, and here we are already at the closing session. Thank you so much to everyone who's still with us, and thank you to everyone who's sat any part of this Rohatsu retreat, and to those who are catching up with this unit later. We absolutely love putting this on, but it wouldn't be anything without everyone who comes to sit with us and to attend. And it's been just lovely seeing all the faces on the screen throughout the retreat. This closing session will feature some Zazen and a talk. Then we'll have some Kinhin. And then the last session of Zazen, which traditionally Jundo joins us and he recites Dogen's Fukanzazengi. And then we close with the verse of atonement, which we've all been speaking about, and the four vows and a few closing words. So thank you so much. I don't know if my bell is going to work enough for you to hear it. So just to let you know, there are going to be three bells, and then we're going to begin some zazen, and I'll give you a short talk. Okay, zazen. Well, Sekashi is shaking his head, but I can assure you I heard three bells even if you didn't. So we shall begin Zazen. And when we finish, I will shout bell, just so you know. So, okay. That works also. And if you could do that in 37 minutes, that'd be splendid too, Sekashi. So, sadly, Kyonin couldn't join us for his talk. He had something going on with his family, so we missed that line. And the line I've been given is the closing line of the verse of atonement, which in Japanese is Isai ga kon kai sange, which at Treeleaf we translate as Now I atone for them all. And just to give you two other translations, in Living by Vow, Shohaku Okumura says, I now make full repentance of it. And the Rinzai nun Miyoko ni translates it as, of this I now make full and open repentance. And I looked up in the dictionary, and atonement and repentance are pretty much the same thing. I have the good fortune to be giving the last talk, so I can draw on all the great talks that have gone before and try and tie together some of the threads as well as giving a slightly different angle. Nothing what I'm saying here negates anything that's gone before, but I want to give it a slightly different look, and I have 3 points to make. Normally, I don't like it when people break down words in order to look at their meaning, but I must admit, as Washin said, the idea of at-one-ment for atonement does fit really nicely here. Excuse me. In Living by Vow, Shohaku Okumura says there are two forms of repentance. Ji-sange, in which we atone for specific acts we've done, and Ri-sange, or formless repentance, in which all things are dropped away. And these have already been mentioned, and some people have talked about that. And my Dharma brother Sekishi talked about the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance, which I think are fundamental to Buddhism and to explaining human behavior. But beyond those three poisons, where do they come from? Why do they arise? And I think they come from a feeling of separateness, the feeling that we're this small self with all its wants and desires, its preferences, its likes and its dislikes. And our actions, when we act from this small self rather than this bigger idea of the boundless self, which is not separate from anything, is what causes us to act out of greed, anger, and ignorance, and causes us to produce these actions that we have to atone for. I think most of us probably don't break the precepts in a coarse way. We're not going around killing, stealing, lying all the time. But what I do find with myself is I can stretch them or break them in a smaller way. I might not lie, but I may exaggerate things so people think better of me. And that's because I don't feel that I'm enough as I am. I may take more than I need, again, to feel enough. And we know we're on a finite planet, so it may not be stealing, but if we're taking more than our fair share, that's not a good thing and it's harming others. We may drink alcohol to get rid again of a feeling of hollowness inside that comes from not being enough, from feeling separate. But when we sit Zazen as we're doing now, we are enough. Everything is enough. You are enough. And I know when I sit outside my flat with the trees and the sun, even the wind and the rain, I don't need for anything to be other than it is. I don't need any more. It is enough. I am enough. Because of this non-separation and interconnectedness, in our ignorance, when we hurt others, we're hurting ourselves too. We're putting hurt and harm into a world that we're part of. And that harm can go on as ripples in a pond, of a stone thrown into a pond, just as kindness can ripple out. When we're performing harmful acts, it's like disposing of chemicals in a water source we're later going to drink from. We're all interconnected. Those harmful acts don't just stop, they go on, they ripple on. We know that our practice is endless. But if we can keep moving forward in Zazen to loosening, softening those boundaries of the small self, seeing that interconnectedness and the fact we're not just this small self, we're far bigger and wider than that. We can get closer to acting out of that Buddha nature rather than the small self. And that, I think, is atonement in its truest sense, when we're acting from that Buddha nature rather than making the small self decisions that cause harm. The second point I want to make is in the first and last lines of this verse of atonement. Which is, all harmful words, thought, and acts ever committed by me since of old, then now I atone for them all. That's not just the acts we've done today. This is all harmful words, thoughts, of acts ever committed by me since of old. And again, from beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance. And Sekishin talked about this in his talk. Buddhism doesn't believe in a first cause. We're going right back. We're taking responsibility for all acts that have ever been committed, all harmful acts ever been committed since time. We're not just talking about our lives and the stupid things we did in our childhood and our teens. We're going beyond that. We're going beyond to what the koan points at in what is your face before your parents were born. It's the same face as you have now. Everything that is. What Jundo calls the whole enchilada. How do we do that? How do we take responsibility for all of the harmful things that have ever happened? Well, the answer is in recognizing the non-separation from everything. Recognize we're a product of all of those conditions. I myself and my life are a product of the slave trade and the colonial empirism of my country, which has made it a prosperous place. I'm not separate from that. I can't point and say, look over there at those bad things that are happening, because I am a product of bad things happening. And we see in our own greed, anger, and ignorance when it arises, we see that reflected around the world in the greed, anger, and ignorance that are taking place. And we can look at some of the conflicts that are happening now. The two most obvious, Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine. When did Israel-Palestine conflict start? Was it on October the 7th with the horrific Hamas massacre? Was it the Israeli blockade since the 2000s? The emergence of Hamas, which might have precipitated that? Breakdown of the peace deals? Arab-Israeli wars of the 50s and 60s? The formation of the Israeli state in 1948 and clearance of Palestinians? The absolutely terrible Holocaust? To go back to biblical times, beyond? We can just go back and back to these interweaving threads. Similarly, Russia-Ukraine, what's the cause? Putin's decision to invade, his annexation of Crimea, which the West didn't take seriously enough, the attitude of Western countries towards Russia and the enlargement of NATO, the breakup of the USSR, the rise of USA as a superpower. Does it go back to Stalin? Beyond? Back and back and back. And again, we can't point over there and say, look, there's terrible things happening that are nothing to do with us. They're evil people doing evil things. I have to recognize that if my country was attacked and people I loved were harmed, I would have feelings of hatred arise. I may have feelings of revenge. Between sits today, I saw the words of the leader of the COP28 summit on climate change when he was He's the leader of or the head of a oil company, and he was saying, there isn't the science to show that we need to cut out fossil fuels. My anger rose. Do I wish harm to him? No. But I can see the seeds of where that happens. Similarly, a year or so ago, maybe 2 years, I went to a Zen workshop on preventing sexual abuse in Sanghas. And this I cannot see as something separate to me. If I start looking and saying, there's sexual abuse happened in that Sangha and that Sangha, that's easy to do. It's easy to judge others. What scares me the most is one day I might be a teacher. I might feel lonely. I might have a student where there's mutual attraction to each other. And I convince myself it's just a Dharma friendship. That's what scares me. And I have to see that greed, anger, and ignorance, that overstepping of boundaries, isn't something that just happens to other people. It could happen to me. The seeds are there. And the final point I want to make about atonement is that each moment is new and fresh, and we can choose how to act. And again, I'm going to refer to my dear Dharma brother Sekoshi, who talked in a recent Ryaku Fusatsu ceremony about how we carry the weight of past behavior and what we've done. And part of Ryaku Fusatsu, which you should all go to because it's brilliant and lovely, is we use that kind of atonement as a way not to wipe the slate clean, because we can't, not take ownership of things we've done in the past. It's in a way at least of clearing that baggage from our mind, so we approach each new day, each new moment without that baggage of what we've done. It reminds me of case 7 of the Mumonkan at Koan. The monk said to Joshu, I have just entered the monastery. Please teach me. Joshu said, have you eaten your rice porridge? Yes, I have, replied the monk. Joshu said, then you had better wash your bowl. With this, the monk gained insight. And what it seems to me what Joshu was saying, as well as the wonderful thing of cleanliness in the kitchen, is after each act, we wash our bowl, we let it go, and we move on to the next moment. Did you do good things yesterday? Great. Wash your bowl. Today's a new day. Did you do bad things yesterday? Great. Well, no, that's not great. Sorry, that's not great. Not good. Bad dog. But then we wash our bowl and move on. Again, because it doesn't matter what you did yesterday. Today's a new day, and you can decide how to act. Dogen talks about this in the Shobogenzo fascicle, Shoaku Makuza, refrain from doing wrongs, which Uncle Brad helpfully translates as don't be a jerk. And Dogen points out that whatever's happened in the past, refraining from doing wrong is just choosing the right thing in this moment and the next one. That's it. We don't have to worry about all the stuff that's gone. Just make the right decision now and in the next moment. For me, refraining from doing wrong is atonement. If we atone and keep doing the same thing, what was the point? When my kids were younger, I used to say to them when they apologize for something that the apology is only meaningful if they choose to do the right thing the next time, or at least, try. We know from research that a lot of sexual abusers were abused themselves. It must be hard coming from that background, I don't. But the way to atone is by not continuing that cycle of abuse. Similarly, alcoholics atone for the damage they can have caused to their loved ones by not having a drink in each moment and the next. We have members of the Sangha who are in recovery, and one is very open about it. My friend Tai Shi, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, because he talks about it all the time in the forum. I think he's 37 years sober, but still in each moment he has to choose to refrain from drinking. In the Buddhist suttas, there was a man called Angulimala you may have heard of. He was a murderer, and Angulimala means finger necklace, because he'd take a finger of each person he'd killed and wear them as a necklace around his thing. He atoned by stopping killing. Did that stop all the damage that had gone before, of all the harm to all the people he killed? No. But he stopped. Israel-Palestine could be stopped now by both sides putting down the baggage of past actions and hurt. I'm not naive, it's not going to happen, or very unlikely. And I'm not going to go and tell people who lost family on October the 7th, to just let that go. It's not my place. I don't know how that feels. Likewise, family who've lost loved ones in the bombing of Gaza. Similarly, Putin could stop the war just like that, this moment, by making a different decision. It's not going to happen, I know. But the point is that the choice, the possibility is there in each moment. I'm not saying it's the same. I don't know enough to compare these situations. But closer to my part of the world, in the conflict in Northern Ireland, it got to a point when the sides did put down enough of their own hurt to choose peace. So did Nelson Mandela. He was able to put down the hurts of apartheid and move forward. It can happen by choosing to refrain from doing wrong and choosing that as a way of atoning. In the Dhammapada in verse 3, the Buddha says, "He insulted me, he hurt me, he defeated me, he robbed me. Those who think such thoughts will not be free from hate." And he's saying, we've got to eventually put down all the pain that's been done to us. And atonement is, for me, taking responsibility for our role in things, our part of things. Is it easy? No. Well, without doing that, what this verse refers to, the cycle of harmful acts committed on account of beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, won't stop. It will just carry on in samsara. Somebody has to say, this stops here and this stops now. And the only way we can do this is through our own practice. This is for me now the essence of now I atone for them all. Choosing not to say harsh words in response to criticism. That is exactly now I atone for them all. Forgiveness is now I atone for them all. Being the first one to offer an olive branch after an argument is now I atone for them all. Most of all, Zazen, where we loosen our attachment to that small self and we let go of some of that greed, anger, and ignorance that comes out of feeling separate and not feeling enough. That is now I atone for them all. This is how we atone. And it starts here, on your cushion, remembering who you really are. So let us continue to sit. Thank you for listening. Sorry, I forgot to say, Daimon, can you do the verse for closing the sutra, please?
May the merits of these teachings penetrate into each thing in all places, so that we and every sentient being together may realize the Buddha's way. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, maha prajna paramita.
Thank you. Kinhin.
We will now have Zazen and a reading of the Fukanzazengi by Master Dogen.
Fukanzazengi, the universally recommended instructions for Zazen by Master Eihei Dogen. The way is originally perfect and all-pervading. So how could it be contingent on practice and realization? The true vehicle is already self-sufficient. So what need could there be for special effort? Indeed, the whole body is now free from dust. So who could believe in some means to brush it clean?
It is never apart from this very place. Thus, what is the use of traveling around to practice? Sit still, please. And yet, if there is a hair's breadth deviation, it is like the gap between heaven and earth. If the least like or dislike arises, I'll say again, if the least like or dislike arises, the mind is lost in confusion. Suppose, though, that one gains some pride of understanding and inflates one's own enlightenment, glimpsing the wisdom a little that runs through all things, attaining the way and clarifying the mind, raising an aspiration to reach for the heavens. Well, you are still playing in the entranceway. You are still short of the vital path of emancipation. Consider the Buddha. Although he was wise already at birth, the traces of his 6 years of upright sitting can yet be seen now. As for Bodhidharma, although he had already received the mind seal, his 9 years of facing a wall is celebrated still. If even the ancient sages were like this, how can we today dispense with wholehearted practice? Therefore, put aside the intellectual practice of investigating words and chasing phrases. Learn to take the backward step that turns the light and shines it inward. Mind and body of themselves will drop away, and your original face will be manifest. If you want to realize such, get to work on such right now. For practicing Zen, a quiet room is suitable. Eat and drink moderately. Put aside all involvements and suspend all worldly affairs. Do not think good. Do not think bad. Do not judge true or false. Give up the operations of mind, the intellect, the movements of the conscious mind. Stop measuring with thoughts, ideas, and views. Have no goals and designs on becoming a Buddha. In fact, how could that be limited to sitting or lying down? I say that to our reclining folks today. At your sitting place, spread out a thick mat and put a cushion on it. Sit either in the full lotus or half lotus position. And I always add, I think if Dogen were here today, he would say, or if you need, for physical reasons, sit in a chair, recline, do what you need. In the full lotus position, first place your right foot on your left thigh, then your left foot on your right thigh. In the half lotus, simply place your left foot on your right thigh. Tie your robes loosely and arrange them neatly. Then place your right hand on your left leg and your left hand on your right palm, thumb tips lightly touching. Straighten your body and sit upright, leaning neither left nor right, even in mind. Leaning neither left nor right, neither forward nor backward. Align your ears with your shoulders and your nose with your navel. Rest the tip of your tongue against the front of the roof of your mouth with teeth together and lips shut. Always keep your eyes open and breathe softly through your nose. Once you have adjusted your posture, take a breath and exhale fully. Rock your body right and left and settle into steady, immovable sitting. Think, not thinking. Think, not thinking. How do you think, not thinking? Non-thinking. This in itself is the essential art of Zazen. The Zazen I speak of is not meditation practice. It is simply the Dharma gate of joyful ease. The practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the koan realized. Traps and snares can never reach it. If you grasp this point, you are like a dragon gaining its home in the water. You are like a tiger taking to its home in the mountains. For you must know that the true Dharma appears of itself, so that from the start, dullness and distraction are struck aside. When you arise from sitting, move slowly and quietly, calmly and deliberately. Do not rise suddenly or abruptly. In surveying the past, we find that transcendence of both mundane and sacred, and dying while either sitting or standing have all depended entirely on the power of Zazen. In addition, triggering awakening with a finger, holding a banner, with a needle, or a mallet, all great koan stories, you know. Triggering awakening with a finger, a banner, a needle, or a mallet, and effecting realization with a whisk, a fist, a staff, or a shout. These cannot be understood by discriminative thinking. Much less can they be known through the practice of some supernatural power. They must represent conduct beyond seeing and hearing. Are they not a standard prior to knowledge, prior to views? This being the case, intelligence, or the lack of it, is not an issue. Make no distinction between the dull and the sharp-witted. If you concentrate your effort single-mindedly, that in itself that in itself is wholeheartedly engaging the way. Practice realization is naturally undefiled. Going forward is, after all, just an everyday affair. In general, in our world and in others, in both India and China, and I always like to add, and Japan, and America, and Canada, and Argentina, and Ukraine, and let's see, Germany, Spain, where am I missing? All the places where you are. I hope Master Dogen will pardon me for adding a little. In general, in our world and others, in both India and China, all equally hold the Buddha seal. While each lineage expresses its own style, they are all simply devoted to sitting. Total engagement in resolute sitting. Although they say that there are 10,000 distinctions and 1,000 variations, they just all wholeheartedly engage the way in Zazen. So why leave behind the seat in your own home to wander in vain through some dusty realms in other lands? If you make, however, one misstep, you stumble past what is directly now in front of you. You have gained the pivotal opportunity of human form. Do not pass your days and nights in vain. You are taking care of the essential activity of the Buddha way. Who would take wasteful delight in the spark from a flint? Besides, form and substance, these very bodies, are like the dew on the grass. The fortunes of life, like a dart of lightning, emptied in an instant, vanished in a flash. Please, honored followers of Zen, those long accustomed to groping for the elephant, do not doubt the true dragon. Devote your energies to the way of direct pointing at the real. Revere the one who has gone beyond learning and is free from effort. Accord with the enlightenment of all the Buddhas. Succeed to the samadhi of all the ancestors. Continue to live in such way, and you will be such a person. The treasure store will open of itself for you to do with as you will. Fukanzazengi, the universally recommended instructions for Zazen by Master Eihei Dogen. now recite the verse of atonement and the 4 vows.
All harmful acts, words, and thoughts ever committed by me since of old, on account of beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and mind, now I atone for them all. To save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to obtain the enlightened way, a way not attainable. To save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way non attainable. To save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to obtain the enlightened way, a way non attainable.
Wonderful, lovely. And so the morning star is shining. The Buddha was enlightened on the 8th day and every day, right where you are. The verse of atonement and the 4 vows was recited by our newest priest, Doshin. I'd like to thank all, not just our priests who made this possible. You should see what's going on behind the scenes with pushing buttons and redoing. Oh boy, but they kept us going with duct tape and spit once again. But most importantly, I want to thank all of you who made this possible. This is your Rohatsu. Today, now, I'd like to say, please go in peace. And the path opens from here. Love you all. See you later. It's morning here. See you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.